Now, statistics say that 83% of the admissions in the orthopedic department were due to road traffic crashes. The hospital recorded 153 cases, translating to 17% due to other causes. Now, let's take a look at expert opinion. Prezo Ruto invents new liberation narrative that erases Mau Mau struggle. They say you don't kick a man when he's down. You let him rise before delivering another dafrau. So my heart went out to Rigiji, the impeached deputy president, fighting in court to have his job restored when he was taken ill last week. You can get more of this opinion on page 11 of the Standard this morning. Disinformation on page 14, still expert opinion. Don't fall for Russia's lies about key vaccines and Mpox origin. Now, it was one of the most effective disinformation campaigns the KGB ever mounted. The AIDS epidemic that would go on to kill 42 million people, more than the number who died in the First World War, was starting to spread globally with devastating effect. But even as the world's doctors struggled to respond, Soviet spies saw an opportunity to seed the ultimate conspiracy by claiming that HIV, the virus which causes AIDS, was fabricated in an American military laboratory. You want to catch up with that on page 14 of the Standard this morning. The Pulse lovers, you have that beefed up for you on inside the Standard, rather. So let's move on and take a look at some other stories on the Standard this morning, and that lands us on business news. Now, we start with this story. Privacy concerns as KRA targets mobile phones in new tax push. CA wants all phone manufacturers, retailers, and mobile network operators to upload email numbers on Taxman's portal. Public and data privacy advocates accuse the regulator of opaqueness in disseminating the crucial policy shift. That story is beefed up for you on page 19. Let's take a look at the statistics. 133% Kenya's mobile penetration rate, that is attributed to some subscribers having more than one SIM card. That story is beefed up for you on page 19. Let's talk matters regulation now. Kenya's grey list status a threat to economy, job creation, says CEOs. Panelists at the inaugural Kenya Anti-Financial Crime Summit say the increased illicit flow of funds within the country's financial system has contributed to Kenya being put on the Financial Action Task Force grey list early this year. The grey listing has increased Kenya's risk profile, which has made foreign investors shy away from investing in the country, impacting job creation. That story is beefed up for you on page 19. Now, let's take a look at the international scene on the Standard this morning. NATO, Ukraine trade, Europe's concerns ahead of US election. Now, Trump has threatened to append NATO and cut a quick deal with Russia over Ukraine. Harris has stressed the importance of NATO and decried Trump's tariffs as a hidden sales tax. That story is beefed up for you on page 22. Now, the numbers here say that the Russia-Ukraine war, $90 billion is the amount that the United States has contributed in support of Ukraine, according to tracker from Kiel Institute. Now, let's talk about the Commonwealth. This is the summit. Commonwealth leaders push for reparation talks. Commonwealth heads of government are to push for a conversation on reparations for the transatlantic slave trade when they meet for the association's first summit in 2 years. The BBC reported on Thursday. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said the focus of the summit should be on real challenges, on things like climate in the here and now, rather than what will end up being very, very long, endless discussions about reparations of the past. That story is beefed up for you on page 22 of the Standard this morning. Now, let's take a look at sports news. The sporting action on the Standard this morning. Bucks stand tall over depleted Sixers. Milwaukee cruise past depleted Sixers. Suns rally past Clippers. Now Bucks led 58-47 at halftime and pushed the advantage to 22 after the break. This is all about the basketball games. Now, let's talk about football. FKF Electoral Board urged to run credible polls. Now, Football Kenya Federation presidential aspirant Sam Nyamweya has called on the FKF Electoral Board to conduct free, fair, and transparent elections. Nyamweya will be seeking to reclaim the seat he lost to incumbent Nick Mwendwa in 2016, but he faces stiff competition from Doris Petra, whose running mate is Mwendwa, and Sami Owino Kempes, Hussein Mohammed, Cleophas Shimanyula, Barry Otieno, Tom Alila, Sam Ochola, and Chris Amimo. You want to catch up with that on page 29. On page 31 this morning, Peerless Junior Starlets afford a last dance at FIFA Under-17's World Cup. Dazzling Kenya overcame Mexico to write history. Nekesa becomes first Kenyan to score in a World Cup as Faith bags Player of the Match award. Congratulations to the Junior Starlets for the incredible performance they showed yesterday at the Under-17 World Cup Champions. Let's take a look at the cover page of the Standard this morning. Barca thrash Bayern as Liverpool stay perfect. Hat-trick hero Rafinha says the match should have been a final. Guardiola praises Haaland after a believe goal against Sparta Prague. That story is beefed up for you on the cover page of the Standard this morning. Now, with that story of Barcelona, we take a quick break here on the Morning Momentum. We come back with the stories making the headlines on the Daily Nation. Don't go away. See you on the other side of this broadcast.
Je, wewe ni mfanyabiashara katika sekta ya elimu, afya bora, usafiri ama unamiliki kampuni yoyote ile? Ungependa kupata fursa ya kutangaza biashara yako ili kuwafikia wateja zaidi? Usikonde. Runinga ya Younib inakupa fursa ya kupeperusha matangazo kuhusu bidhaa na huduma unazotoa kwa bei nafuu. Kwa maelezo zaidi, wasiliana nasi kupitia nambari za simu 0750344700 ama kupitia barua pepe marketing@younibtv.com. Jinyakulie leo. Younib TV, ever the best.
Welcome back to the Morning Momentum. If you're just joining us, you are rolling with the host with the most. Alfonsoh is my name. Use the hashtag, the Morning Momentum at Younib MEDIA TV at Alfonsoh Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines on the Daily Nation this morning. Now, Ruto says Adani deals are good for you. President William Ruto has finally shown his hand, throwing his weight behind the controversial multi-billion shilling Adani deals in the energy, transport, and health sectors, which he says will help to ease tax burden on Kenyans and reduce the country's reliance on borrowing. That story is beefed up for you on page 7. Now, the 95 billion deal between Adani Energies and Ketraco will cut power costs, says the president. On other stories, why Gachagua wants to quit case. Why Gachagua wants judges to quit case rather. Impeached Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has sought the recusal of the judges handling several petitions challenging his ouster, claiming he will not get a fair hearing. Though through several lawyers, Mr. Gachagua said he no longer has confidence in judges Eric Ogola, Anthony Mrima, and Freda Mugambi, claiming that the bench has already taken a position against him in the matter. As such, the court is today expected to decide on whether it will continue handling the case. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5. Of course, we took a look at the claims on the Standard on the first segment of this broadcast. Now, let's take a look at page 3, how Wells Fargo boss walked into death trap. When Wells Fargo Human Resource Director Willis Ayeko flew out of Nairobi on October 18th to mourn with a friend who had lost his mother and attend to other matters, he thought he would make his way back to the city as usual, but this was not to be. On page 2 is Lee killings, last moments of mother, daughter, and niece. Now, let's get up close and candid with the Daily Nation. Last moments before killing of woman, daughter, and niece. Bodies of the adults had stab wounds, with police saying it is the work of the same killers. Now, young woman with her cousin went to look for her aunt, only for the three to be found murdered several hours later. You want to catch up with the story on page 2. Now, DNA fails to link body to missing ward representative. The mystery surrounding the abduction of Dela ward representative Yusuf Hussein Ahmed deepened on Wednesday when DNA tests showed a body retrieved from a lake in Wajir did not belong to him. The lawmaker's family had agreed to have DNA tests on the body found in Lake Yahud, about 8 kilometers from Wajir town. More of that is beefed up for you on page 2. On page 3, family of murdered Wells Fargo human resource boss calls for speedy justice. Police officers say they are following leads to help them establish the motive of the killing. It remains unclear whether the attackers were at the night vigil Ayeko attended or they waylaid him on the road. That story is beefed up for you on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's take a look at page 4. Why Gachagua wants judges out of his cases. Lawyers for the Attorney General and Parliament accused those on Mr. Gashagua's side of trying to intimidate and embarrass the judges. The bench will this afternoon decide whether it will continue handling the cases challenging Mr. Gashagua's impeachment. At a glance, these are the claims made against judges. Claim number 1. Justice Anthony Mrima is a close friend of Senate Speaker Amason Kingi, who is party to the cases. Claim number 2, President William Ruto appointed Justice Eric Ogola's spouse to the Kenya Water Towers Board. And claim number 3 is that Dr. Freda Mugambi was a master's student of Professor Kithure Kindiki. Now, let's take a look at page 5, presidential term extension backlash. UDA leaders clash. After being greeted with public outrage, politicians from the United Democratic Alliance are now scrambling to stop a controversial bill that seeks to extend the term limits of the president and other elected leaders. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 6, fit as fiddle, Uhuru makes public comeback. Former president's absence from the limelight fueled rumors about his health. Mr. Kenyatta's well-being had become a concern. Now, in 2022 is the year Mr. Rigathi Gachagua used demeaning language against the then President Uhuru Kenyatta. He has since apologized, says the Daily Nation this morning. On page 7, Ruto says Adani like deals will ease taxpayers' burden. Now, President says deals will lower power costs and spur manufacturing. Kenya has signed a 30-year agreement worth 95 billion shillings with Adani Energy for electricity transmission lines. That story is beefed up for you on page 7. Let's take a look at page 8. No end in sight for IEBC troubles as US weighs in. Kenyans wishing to recall their MPs cannot do so without a fully constituted electoral commission. The president has been accused of deliberately delaying the commission's reconstitution. That story is beefed up for you on page 8. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 10. Title mystery. Farm used housing land to get a 1.9 billion shillings loan. While 2 title deeds for projects in Pangani were missing, the whereabouts of the Jivanji title remains a puzzle. This is the latest twist in the mystery over a missing title deed for an affordable housing project in Jivanji, Ngara. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. Now, let's move on and take a look at other stories here on the Daily Nation on page 12. Oil and gas tycoon staring at loss of 3.6 billion shillings assets on unpaid loan. Save for one small plot in Mombasa, the bank has since sold most of these properties. In March this year, the court gave Premier Bank the nod to auction the 6 properties. That story is beefed up for you on page 12 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, we have here on the Daily Nation this morning, the Catholic University of Eastern Africa marking the 40th anniversary and 43rd graduation ceremony. You'll take a look at that when you grab your copy of the Daily Nation. Let's shift gears and take a look at the expert opinion. Prioritize mental health in correctional services. As custodians of those in conflict with the law, prison and probation officers interact with offenders for long periods. These are sentiments by Salome M. Biko. You will catch up with that on the Daily Nation. Now, on page 17, Gachagua, it's time to cut a deal. If, I quote, these are sentiments by Mutuma Mathiu, if your usefulness is at an end, as Mr. Gachagua's clearly is, he should be sophisticated enough not to wallow in the moment, to accept that he has been played masterfully. Those opinions are also beefed up for you on page 17. Let's move on and take a look at county news on the Daily Nation this morning. We start with Vihiga. County officials on the spot over fishy staffing practices. Recruitment spending has surpassed the 35% constitutional ceiling. Senators have initiated a probe into the hiring practices at the Vihiga County Public Service Board. Now, this is the controversy. 35% is the constitutionally stipulated ceiling for spending on salaries and wages in the counties. You want to catch up with that on page 21. Briefly, in Baringo County, popular night dances banned. Authorities in the country have banned the popular Kwara night dances, blaming them for breaking homes and sparking a surge in teenage pregnancies, early marriages, and school dropouts. In Bomet County, land road delays housing project. A raging land dispute between the county government and the Department of Prisons threatens to put a damper on the launch of 220 low-cost houses in Bomet town, whose construction is nearing completion. Now, let's move on and take a look at more stories. The DN2 Voice today talks about not just a woman's disease, breast cancer. The experiences of 2 male survivors reveal how gender bias in healthcare, delayed diagnosis, and cultural stigma are creating a deadly crisis where men face higher mortality rates than women. You want to catch up with those insights on the DN2, The Voice article. Now, let's move on and take a look at other stories here on the Daily Nation. On page 24, it takes us to Turkana County. Lapset project promises glad tidings for residents. Nasija and Lochoremoit are major pit stops offering accommodation and free parking. The 38 billion initiative is aimed at easing regional trade by improving infrastructure. In West Pokot County, locals outraged as livestock bombed. Residents have accused security officers of targeting and killing their livestock while pretending to fight armed bandits on the West Pokot-Turkana border. You want to catch up with that on page 24. Now, let's quickly shift gears from the county news and take a look at the international news on the Daily Nation this morning. France rallies support for Lebanon, war rages. Now, Israel has dealt blows to Hezbollah, killing its leader Syed Hassan Nasrallah. Caretaker Prime Minister says Beirut could deploy 8,000 soldiers as part of truce plan. Now, that is all about bloodbath that Israel has dealt blows to Hezbollah. Now, African progress backslides as coups. War persists, a study says. Now, nearly half of Africa's citizens live where governance has worsened over the past decade. A new report shows. The annual Ibrahim Index of African Governance report found that despite progress in 33 countries, overall governance was worse in 2023 in 21 countries, accounting for just under half of Africa's population compared with 2014. Briefly, in Abuja, Nigeria, Tinubu sacks and hires ministers. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has reshuffled his 45-member cabinet, naming 7 new ministers, dismissing 5 and reassigning 10 others, a spokesperson said on Wednesday. Now, let's take a look at business news on page 32. Jubilee and DTB launch new cover premium pay option. Now, Jubilee Health Insurance, in partnership with Diamond Trust Bank, has launched a digital system for payment of insurance premiums. The option, known as Lipa Pole Pole, allows customers to pay premiums in flexible installments that match their budgets until completion. In matters finance, IFC, Equity Bank in 2.6 billion deal, risk share deal. Now, the International Finance Corporation has announced a 2.58 billion shillings risk-sharing facility for Equity Bank of Kenya, dedicated to financial inclusion for refugees and their host communities. In matters energy, stove maker gets 1.9 billion shillings for clean cooking. Cooking stove maker Ban has received 1.93 billion shillings funding from the European Investment Bank to expand distribution of its eco-friendly electric products to households across East Africa. Now, let's take a look at sports news on the Daily Nation this morning. We start with the boxing. Kenyan boxers hold their own in the ring. Now, Kinshasa hosts top continental pugilists, and Diego Mogunde and Macharia win to qualify for championship finals. In matters golf, Muthaiga tournament, the highlight of weekend action. A journey that started in 1993 when Muthaiga Golf Club's current chairman Kavit Baku joined the organization reaches its climax this weekend with the chairman's prize golf tournament, which marks the end of his tenure as the club's boss. You want to catch up with that on page 41. You have the weekend golf fixtures also beefed up for you on page 41. On page 42, let's talk about Olympics. Africa deserves more slots at the Olympics, Batch told. The IOC boss is scheduled to meet with President Ruto at State House in Nairobi today. Sorry. Kenyan Sports Federation heads ask IOC boss to increase continent's representation. That story is beefed up for you on page 42. On page 43 this morning, how coach Cheche's tactical shift delivered the win for Kenya. Junior starlets end on a high after win over Mexico. This is all about the FIFA Under-17s Women's World Cup. On page 43, integrity. MPs, only IEBC can conduct free, fair FKF elections. Members of Parliament have scheduled a meet with Sports Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen to push for the postponement of the December 7th Football Kenya Federation national elections. The MPs want a caretaker committee appointed to run local football in the interim, citing widespread corruption and inefficiency at the federation. Let's take a look at the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. National Assembly and Senate clash over county budgets. The impasse between the two houses is now headed for mediation. National Assembly legislators voted to reduce allocations for various projects that are being implemented by the county governments. Now, Controversy, here's the thing, MPs vote to slash county budgets. 15 billion shillings is the amount of money that the National Assembly once hived out of the county budgets and which had been approved by senators in the county government's additional allocation bill in 2024. Now, also on the cover page, funds to be locked out of network over unpaid taxes. With effect from January 1st, 2025, MNOs must ensure that they only connect devices to their networks after verifying the tax compliance status. That story is beefed up for you on the cover page of the Daily Nation. With that story from the Communications Authority of Kenya, we come to the end of today's session of the Morning Momentum. Thank you so much for tuning in and for supporting Younib TV and also for supporting the Morning Momentum. Many thanks also goes to all those who made this broadcast a success. The Chief Controller Anifa, Kavira, and behind the lens, Raphael, Wangila. I have been your host, Alfonsoh. Do have a beautiful and a lovely weekend. See you on Monday, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful weekend.